Three, two, one. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the last podcast of 2021. We have a screamer for you today. We have the biggest brain in conversion rate optimization on the show today. The conversion crusader himself, Shaun Brandt. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate that intro, Rama. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so as you can see, I'm in a little different setup. The green screen's not in yet, so it's not perfectly crisp, but it will be soon. I'm obsessed with this new little app we were just talking about called But I am still in Austin. We are building out a team in Austin, so please apply, people. Where's this podcast find you, Shaun?
I am currently in Edmonton, Alberta, which I don't think anyone listening will envy. It is minus 32 Celsius here today. You do not want to be where I am.
Oh man, that's barbecue weather in Canada, though, right?
Yeah.
Oof,
we're
still
barbecuing. Don't worry about that.
How long you've been in Canada your whole life? Yeah.
I grew up here. I was born here. I went to university here. After university, I moved a few different places. I lived in Paris for a little bit. I've lived in Miami for 3 years, and I spent a lot of time in New York and a few other places with my work. So mostly in Edmonton and in Alberta, but a little bit everywhere.
What's been your favorite? Paris. That's pretty cool.
Paris was super fun. I don't know if I could live there forever, but what an amazing city. I think Miami. I went in pretty skeptical, just the optics of Miami traditionally, but I think I really loved it. The food scene and the culture, and yeah, I fell in love with Miami. I mean, my work was what took me there, and my work is what took me out, but I could totally move back. Yeah,
I love it. If you would live anywhere else, is that where it would be?
It would probably be there or New York. I love New York.
Yeah. Any spots in specific, like Brooklyn or Midtown Manhattan, anything like that? Or
yeah, I'm a Manhattan guy. I mean, Brooklyn's great, but yeah, Manhattan for sure.
Yeah, I love New York City, man, but I can't, like, the energy there is so palpable. It's fantastic, but it consumes me.
Yeah.
Like, I love living in the fire, but I can't, like, stay in the fire too long, because if not, I'll just keep running until I pass out. But it's one of my favorite cities as well. It's beautiful. Yeah. Okay, cool. So tell me, so you have two big kind of gigs right now, right? So you're co-founder of Colin, which is a phenomenal paid media agency, full stack. And then you also have a little bit of a DTC darling on Twitter with Audit. First of all, fantastic name.
Thank you.
But tell us a little bit about kind of those two, and how did you end up there?
I mean, it was kind of a roundabout way that both of them came about. In 2011, one of my partners and we started a product design agency called Verset, and that's kind of what took me to Miami and Paris and New York. We ended up opening offices across the U.S. and one in Europe, and we just kind of built up a reputation of really dialing in the details for a lot of the brands we worked with, and we kind of got tired of it. Just got tired of the big agency life, trying to just basically constantly up customers, retainers, and it just kind of became a sales game and less of a creative endeavor. And we really got into it to help brands and to actually design things, and we weren't really doing that anymore. So we actually exited that a few years ago and started private consulting. And at the end of last year, pretty much exactly this time last year, Chris McCoolin, he reached out to us and he said, he's doing really well in the performance space, and I want to scale. I know you guys know how to build an agency, and you've had success there. Do you want to partner on this? And as you know, Chris is just brilliant in that space. So I'm a firm believer in betting on the people behind the brand. So we saw that opening and we took it, and I think working with Chris has been a complete eye-opener for us. I think the way that Audit came about was seeing all these brands within that agency spending so much money on ad dollars, and then when they get to the site, they're like, okay, well, yeah, we haven't spent any money here, so like they're just focused on ads. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it. As someone coming from the product design background and building these products, like when I say products, I mean the digital side, so building the site, building that experience, I couldn't wrap my head around a brand. I've had arguments with customers about $5,000 website. I've had customers arguments about a $100,000 website, but there's always that pushback of like, I don't want to spend money on my site. And then they're going and spending 150 a month on ad dollars on Facebook. But when they get to the site, the experience is shit. And I just can't, I couldn't wrap my head around that. So anyways, all of our customers were doing this, not all of our customers doing exactly that, but they're spending a lot of money and being very intentional with their ad dollars, and they're hiring great people like Chris. But when they get to the site, they don't have bad experiences, but they're not investing there as much as they should be. So that's kind of where audit came in. We started doing CRO audits for our cooling customers, and it worked out really well. And I think we just kind of saw a little niche there of so many CRO brands out there are so focused on data and testing and, all the traditional metrics of CRO, which there's nothing wrong with that. But our background was not in that at all. Our background is in just building great brand experiences. And that's kind of where the audit brand came in, is to say, okay, well, we're not traditional CRO, and we probably don't explain that well enough on the site. But from a traditional CRO perspective, it's much more about data and testing and all of these different metrics that the brands are constantly looking at. And we take a more brand first approach of saying, do these types of experiences, like elements in your experience, to build trust with customers, and that will get them buying more and more often. It's, like I said, it's not like, hey, flip this switch and the numbers go up the next day type of mentality, but the customers that are believing in our strategy and buying it, it's working. So, I mean, I'm not sure, we don't have a benchmark against other CRO agencies, but people seem to like what we're doing, and it seems to be working for them. So it's been super exciting. It's been that all has happened, like I said, in the last 11 months. So it's been kind of a whirlwind year of growth for both companies. Coolin has grown, I think, 4 or 5x since then, and audit substantially as well. So it's been super fun, but obviously very overwhelming as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And for people out there that aren't hip to it, CRO just stands for conversion rate optimization. Sorry for throwing all the jargon around for you people.
Yeah, sorry. I hate when people do that. I go do it.
I do the exact same thing. I forgot you were deep in the product game. And so, full disclosure, I've had some clients do a audit, and they actually came back. These are some pretty high level people, and came back and said that was literally the best audit they've ever done. And what I really liked about your guys' service as well now is you kind of have a developer on staff, or not on staff, but you can kind of hand people off, because that's one of the other things I think a lot of CRO agencies, or just people that give strategy advice in general, is I think improvements come in 2 packages, right? There's the strategy level and there's the tactical level, but then you have to implement it.
Yeah.
And so many times people are like, this strategy looks great, these tactics look great, now what?
Yeah.
And so it was just so helpful to not have to go find a developer and just kind of go through that. But that aside, the audits that you guys did were kind of, to your point, it was so refreshing to see not that I want to say non-quantitative, because that sounds a bit pejorative, but abstracting away from the numbers and realizing there's a fucking human on the other side actually buying stuff and trying to figure out, like, do I tell my wife, am I going to brag to my wife about this, or am I going to regret this purchase? Like, what happens on this screen? What is the vibe here? Like, what is going on? How important is this touch point? If it is important, one of my favorite things that you guys did was the blank add to cart page. Like, it's fantastic. Like, if you don't have anything in your cart and you have all these things, like, why waste all these things? And so for me, it was just so incredible to see. And now it all kind of comes together, because it felt like a product designer doing the audit, because there was so many things like cognitive load, like all these things that, like, you'll never hear like CRO people talk about. All you're talking about, to your point, is just quants, right? I mean, they're just like numbers in, numbers out. How do we get 0.5% here? How do we get 0.5% there? And what I found, you guys were looking for the step changes. You were looking for, like, hey, like, this might be a big win, and it's going to be a big win forever, because you should change this flow or this, like, the way you're doing it. And just to round off this little ranty monologue, I saw it all the time as well, where you would have this huge budget for a fire hose of demand, and then you have this like garden hose of a cash register.
Yeah.
And you just have all this beautiful demand. Your paid is doing great. You're crushing all this and you're getting people to the site. And then they're like the fucking weekend gift where they're just looking around like, how the hell do I buy stuff? Or like, where is this? Why don't I see bundles? So I love that. And it makes so much sense now, intertwining your product. So jumping off on the product stuff, what was some of your favorite ones that you guys worked with or worked on? Is there any cool stories there?
Oh man, I was so jaded by the end. I don't know if any of them were favorites, but no, I mean, I'll skip all the big ones because those were the ones that I hated. But I think we worked with some really fun ones. I worked with a STEM education place that was super fun, and we got to actually kind of figure out, okay, well, what does this look like from a brand perspective, but also how does it live inside of the spaces for STEM education, and how does that translate to a digital product? And we kind of got to work in like the full kind of scope of like every touch point, which I think is really interesting. And, like pulling it back to that empty cart thing, a lot of when we talk to people that get an audit report, or even people that are looking to get an audit report, and they're like, okay, well, how many people are going to buy or add to cart or shop from the empty cart? And it's like, that's not the point at all. The point is that when they got there or they landed up, it's like a 404. Do you want to serve them an empty page, or do you want to give them a brand experience? It's not about, they're not going to add to cart from there or necessarily even increase conversion. It's that it feels like this cohesive, like, it's like walking through IKEA. You just like, it's annoying as fuck, but like, you just feel so catered to, like you're being taken through this journey. And I think that's super important for building brand trust. So I think that there was a lot of clients that we worked with in Verset where we got to kind of flex different creative muscles and really touch on different elements in the brand experience, whether it was an actual retail bridging to digital or vice versa. So a lot of those ones were the funnest, the ones where you're actually dealing with multiple verticals within their journey, not just a digital product.
Yeah, I love that. So you have this kind of like polymathic set of like conversion skills, product skills, kind of copy skills, understanding conversion processes. How did you gain all this mastery? And then kind of, because how old are you? You're early 30s, late 20s?
35.
35.
20s,
oh, yeah.
I appreciate that, 20s.
Yeah, you look good. I'm 36 over here.
There we go.
In the old man train. But what are kind of some tips for people that are, a little bit more junior on their journey, trying to skill up to the level that you have? Is there any like frameworks, any readings, essays, follows, anything like that?
Oh man, I had a really unique start to getting into this space. So I think that story might be helpful, but we'll see. I mean, I came into it, I got a degree in commerce, and, like most people with a degree, I came out and kind of was like, well, I mean, that taught me, don't get me wrong, it was great, but in terms of what it taught me, it wasn't necessarily how to start a business or how to start an agency. But how I came into actually doing a product design agency is I knew I liked design. I knew what things should look like. I knew, I kind of had the eye for it, but I didn't actually know how to do any of it. I didn't know how to draw. I didn't know how to use Adobe. I didn't know any of that stuff. So what I actually did is I would go advertise to get clients, and then I would hire someone else that was really talented to do all the work. So when I started out, I would bring on like a $3,000 brand client, and I would hire someone for $5,000. And I just kept incurring debt and hiring all these amazing designers from New York to execute my work. I wasn't like hiding behind it. I told the client that's what was happening.
Sure.
But what it did is once we put a brand to that as an agency, we kind of just became synonymous with quality. And along that journey of 6 months, I taught myself everything I needed to know in design. I taught myself Adobe and Sketch, like all these things.
So
and
cool.
I mean, that would be my best piece of advice is just, it's like, there's no right path. There's no right answer. Just, and you can pretty much teach yourself anything you need to know online. Like Twitter D2C is the perfect example of that. Like you can learn anything you want to learn. All you need to do is put in the time and effort. I mean, it's literally anything. So, I mean, how we approached that when we started out with hiring other people, I mean, looking back, it was a total gamble. Like we had no money and we were losing money on every client just to build a reputation. But it worked out in the end, and it kind of evolved into, what ended up being a pretty massive product design agency with offices in Paris, New York, Miami, Calgary, Toronto. So like and that's from two guys that's a design agency that I had never designed before when I started it. So I think that's just a kind of proof that you really don't even need to know what you're doing when you start. You can kind of fake it till you make it. I mean, there's nothing really more faking it like hiring someone else to do the work. So I think, I don't know. I hope that was useful.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of in that same vein of, I don't really care too much about pedigree. I'm more of that hacker ethic of like, what have you built?
Yeah.
What can you do? What have you kind of exposed yourself to in the past? And to your other point, I've always said that like these kind of last 5 to 7 years is the best time to be exceptional and the worst time to be average.
Yeah.
Because if you do have the drive, like, dude, YouTube is insane. And then to your point, like, if you can just get any semblance of competency, you can pretty much sell to people. You might not be closing, $10,000, $20,000 retainers, but like, and you can also, I'm also a very big stoic. And so there's a stoic belief of kind of like a radius of control. And so if stuff's outside of your control, fuck it, don't worry about it. But as paradoxically, as you start to control the things in your radius of control, your radius of control actually expands. And so there's this kind of this paradoxical concept, and too long didn't read is action breeds action. And I love that, man. I think that, I don't know if I'd arbitrage at a negative. That's a pretty ballsy move. I thought you were taking some sauce off of it, but you're actually essentially paying to learn. That's a pretty saucy move. I don't know if I would have taken that path.
I wouldn't recommend it either. I would never do it again.
But it is cool to understand that in the long run, that really was essentially marketing spend, right? Where like you were brand building with this arbitrage, and even though you were losing 2K, this set you up to really kind of just clean up in the long term once people have realized that brand was established. And quite frankly, like there's levels to this game, and the good people are expensive, and quite frankly, you want to learn from the best people. And so there's definitely some wisdom in that, where you're hiring the killers to come in and you are getting, the other thing is being green. You don't have to unlearn things. Yeah. And so since you were learning from all the crushers at the beginning, maybe it doesn't sound as crazy, but yeah, eating a couple K, closing a client and be like, yes, I just netted negative 2K. Yeah. It can't be the most exciting moment, but to each their own.
No, and to your point, it kind of felt like we're investing in our own education, right? We're learning through their processes. How are they delivering things? Like we didn't have any experience in any of that, right? Proposals, all that stuff. So you're kind of paying these people that are best in their class to show you how they do it, which, I'm obviously in that space now, and I want people to be paid for their time. So even if they didn't produce anything, it's kind of, we're kind of just paying these people that can, consult for us, really.
Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say that. That's fantastic.
I think another kind of example of that is audit. Really, I mean, when we first came into this, we had so many customers or people, and we talked about it being like, well, okay, so how much access do you need to analytics and all that stuff? And I'm like, look, guys, I'm sorry, I don't want to disappoint you, and don't buy one if you don't believe this, but we don't look at your data, like we just don't. And I think that was a lesson for me of just like, especially in this space where there's so much noise. You don't always have to, do what everyone else is doing. Like to be totally frank, when we started audit, we had never, ever tested our ideas on actual conversion. Like we're making a lot of assumptions, or we made a lot of assumptions, and the assumptions were simple. If you can build more trust with a customer when they're on your site, they'll buy more, or at least they'll buy more often, or at least they'll talk about it and someone else will come. It's all the long game, right? And I think I would say if you're a reseller from Amazon that wants to launch and kill a brand within a year, do not buy an audit, because it's not short-term CRO for sure. But I think, we took hold of our ideas and our I guess mentality for CRO, and we just went with it. There was no testing. It was just like, let's hit the ground running. Let's get some clients. If it doesn't work, we offer money back. So let's not screw anybody testing these things out.
Yep.
But we just kind of went for it, and thankfully it worked. But I think that mentality of just like you said, like there's so much access to information and opportunity out there. Like there's no reason to like just go for it. And test these things out as obviously as much as you can. But yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, one more question and then we'll wrap up the first segment. What's one weird skill you have?
Oh God.
Or one talent that people will be like, that's fucking weird.
What is a weird talent that I have? I have
Play
like
bagpipes?
no, I don't play bagpipes. I used to play guitar. I haven't played in so long. Um, I used to do a lot of water sports, believe it or not,
Oh, cool.
when I was younger, which is an odd thing to do in Canada because it's really not that long of a water sports season. But yeah, I used to be able to do like flips and stuff and do
So
all the stuff.
wakeboard, slalom ski,
Wakeboard,
dual skis, wakeboard.
wakeboard,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Those are the fancy boats. I
Yeah.
like it.
Except I was
I love
never
it.
in the fancy boat. I was in like the outboard fishing boat doing the same shit.
The barge with just the bigger motor and you're just kind
Yeah.
of flooring it.
Yeah. There's a keg on the front and like 7 people and that's yeah. No, there's nothing
Towing it.
cool about it. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. All right, awesome. You made it through the first segment unscathed, dropping knowledge bombs everywhere, Shaun. Well done.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So let's get into the value add segment. All right, so I want to jump in firstly. Kind of, we touched on this a little bit, but in terms of like when you're thinking of either an audit or bringing on somebody at Cullen, what's that kind of process and strategy like? Like what's going through your head there? Are there metrics you're looking at? Is it like a temperament fit? Do they have processes, or kind of take us through that either through audits lens or Cullen's lens?
Yeah, I mean, I have much more experience with this from the product design background because we had a lot of
Oh,
staff.
that's even better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a lot of staff there versus audits, just my partners and I. But
Yep.
I mean, from the just on the coolant front and on the audit front, I think someone said this to me last week, which I think is really effective, and they were talking about actually hiring someone for email strategy. But they said what they were looking for was someone that could balance the taste of a brand marketer and the conversion mentality of a performance marketer. And I think that's probably, whether it's in the audit space or the performance marketing space, that's really what you want. And that's a lot of what audit is talking about when we talk CRO. It's like they're looking at from both lenses. It's not one or the other, and it's not one's better or one's worse. Like that's not it at all. It's just having kind of that full vision of taking the perspective of the brand, the customer, all the different potential outcomes and seeing it holistically versus just like, what's the data say on Facebook like that. And I think that's in any role in this space, it's really critical to find people like that aren't just, not to say that, people that are really talented in one vertical aren't good hires, because they are in a lot of cases, but I prefer finding those people that are looking at things more holistically. I find that they learn faster. I find that they're more self-sufficient. They're not taking as much, they're, like I said, they're learning on YouTube, or they're so used to learning that way that they're not constantly asking questions, which, especially when you're hiring people, that's my biggest fear constantly. And that's why I got out of the agency, is just, you spend more time managing people than you do actually managing your business. And that's obviously super stressful, but it's also like, how are you supposed to grow your business? Like the whole point of starting a business was to, build something for, yourself and the people that you're connecting with. And I think there's nothing wrong with managing people. It's just in my position, it's not for me. I'd rather work with people that somewhat manage themselves for the most part.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I'm with you. The one challenge there is usually those kind of people that have the skill set of, I love that, taste slash conversion mindset, where and that was kind of Steve Jobs' thesis, where a lot of the magic lived at the confluence of the arts and technologies, right? Like at that intersection is really where things come off, because you have this kind of liberal arts holistic view with the knock-on effects, but then you also have this technician of like, okay, cool, you want to build a unicorn, but where do we find the horn? Where do we find the head? And so it's this marriage of, really, to me, innovation and dreaming, but also practicality and pragmatism, and the ability to have that dream, but also be able to execute upon it is really the show, in my opinion. And finding those people, pay them, keep them, do whatever you can, because they're kind of like singer-songwriters where they can write the song and sing it. Man, because one of the things that I absolutely underestimated becoming CMO is that managerial perspective of like, unless you're bringing in kind of VP, senior level people where you can kind of basically just brain dump on them, like, okay, go get it, Shaun. And you're like, all right. And you kind of fucking figure it out. But when you bring in more junior people, I mean, it's not a knock on them, but they have no idea what they're doing. Like, they need some sort of leadership. And I found that was something I really need to work on, because it is really valuable to be able to skill those people up. But at the same time, to your point, I'm in a position that I can do that, but a lot of people need to be working on their business, not working in their business. And I see it all the time where you hit these plateaus where there's a certain point where you just can't scale anymore because you just don't have the bandwidth. And then you start to have degradations across other sectors in your business. And then, you know, all that fancy reputation that you built, that's what the weird thing about reputation is, so hard to get, so easy to lose. Yeah.
No, and I to your point, like, I think it is an important role, and someone has to do it. I think just you have to be very conscious of who's doing it and when, because like it's happening literally right now at Audit. Like we're scaling and we're trying to add additional services. We're talking about launching an entirely community portion of it where we're doing the audit that way. And it's finding the right people that are on board for so many facets of it, because especially with my background, I'm looking at it like, okay, well, are you seeing the things I'm seeing, or are you just reading the reports we've given and regurgitating it back to customers in a new report? Because that's not what I want. I don't want you to learn my perspective and then go tell new customers how to place a button on their site. That's not what I want at all. I want someone that goes in and understands that brand journey, analyzes it, and gives them a perspective that's unique to them. And I think finding people like that, it's so hard. It's
so hard. And not only that, like we found a few people, and a lot of times they're doing what they want to do. And so it's like, here's a bunch of money. They're like, well, I'm making fine money. I don't have a boss. Like, I'm running my own little agency. I'm running 4 or 5 clients and I'm printing money. Like, why would I want to change this? And you're like, fair point. All right. And so, I've found that those kind of people with those skill sets have really become incredibly either expensive or, quite frankly, just unattainable, because the economics needed, like, it's not even an economics thing. It's a lifestyle thing where they're happy where they're at, and they don't want to bring in all these other weird pressures. They don't know about these. They already have their own processes. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the other side of it is, I think with Coolin, what we're seeing is people are obviously expensive, and a lot of them are in roles that they already love. But when you have leadership like Chris, where, you know, he's a little more vocal, he's out there, and people really do believe in his ability to increase, you know, the sales for these brands and change these brands and his customers. We're seeing a lot of people interested in working there just simply because they want to believe in that vision, and they really trust in Chris. So I think that's one of the other things of in this new day and age of hiring and people working from home and all this stuff. I think having leadership that communicates and is very vocal and upfront and open, like Chris is just really critical to drawing good talent to your company.
Oh, man, I couldn't agree more. So there's something in economics called hygiene theory, or pricing theory. Hygiene theory is kind of like the lay term for it. But anyways, the too long didn't read there is satisfaction and dissatisfaction actually don't exist on the same spectrum. They're actually 2 different spectrums. And so what that means is there's certain hygiene factors at a job, so like a cool office, compensation, bennies, all these things. But if you're not really happy, so like, for example, like if purpose drives you, like you're saying, like having a purpose or having a great leader or these things like that, those actually make you more satisfied in your job. But getting more money, getting a better office, all these PTO, all these things are just making you less dissatisfied. And so it's a really good point you make there, because I think in the 90s and early aughts, you could just throw money at people and it worked. Where now there's like, I don't want to say like an elevation in consciousness, but I think there's a lot, especially when you get into a more, you know, talented place on your life journey, you command, you know, more leverage. And so I think these people are seeing that, and they're starting to, you know, obviously hit the base economic requirements, but they are leveraging, you know, more purpose or more kind of things that they value to make them more satisfied with their job versus just printing more money.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Tell me why, actually, let's jump in. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen in some CRO stuff, like in terms of audits? Like, what are some big like no-nos that you're like, wow, I can't believe people are doing this?
I won't call out anyone directly, but I think that the probably the biggest thing that we see that we're constantly, it's like a broken record every time I'm writing these things, is everyone kind of thinks they have this unique way to position and market their product that's different than everyone else. And they almost forget to just explain what the hell they make. Like there's all the jargon and whatever, and then you get like 4 scrolls down, and it's like, here's what I make, and it's like, man, no one fucking cares. They didn't get there. You already lost them in the first second, and I think the biggest learnings that we've given to customers is just being crystal clear right off the hop. Like, don't talk about your Christmas sale. Don't tell them what you do, tell them why you do it, and give them a button to go buy it. If they don't go there, great. Give them all the rest of the bullshit and the marketing jargon. But in that first kind of glimpse of your brand, where someone's, you know, a lot of the people coming to your homepage or whatever are just discovering you, I think it's just so crucial to communicate that way. And then the other thing that we always tell our customers is, don't tell users what you don't do. So, you know, like I was just having a conversation with a company, and it said, you know, this certain product doesn't go on your roof. And it's like, okay, well, that's great. I love that it doesn't have to go on my roof, but why don't you just tell me where the fuck it goes? Like, now you're leaving it to the customer to go discover what more about your product they can learn. Just tell me exactly where it goes. Don't tell me where it doesn't go. So I think a lot of marketers come in and they write copy for brands, and they try and get creative and unique ways of positioning things. And a lot of the times it just doesn't work. At least from a conversion perspective, it doesn't work. It sounds nice and it looks nice on a billboard, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah. I mean, from my experience, that's exactly what I've dealt with as well, where there's that kind of KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. And the more I stray away, or bells and whistles, and then you have this gorgeous parallax, and you have, you know, sometimes it can just be like, I'm a big kind of believer in, you have to know somebody, like somebody, trust somebody before you transact with them. And so as long as you're ticking those boxes, man, I think, so I came, and I'm sure you can totally empathize coming from the product world, but I came from the design world as well. And I used to basically just worship at the altar of, like, quote unquote, like, beautiful design. Yeah. And what you find is, like, beautiful design is a lot of times like high fashion, where it definitely is influential and it trickles down. But like, most people want to wear like blue jeans or a t-shirt or something like that. And you need to get that to them versus having this like highfalutin, like to your point of just putting all this wrapping around, like, hey, do you want this? Do you trust us? Do you like us? Buy it. Here's how you do it. And I think that has really been lost on a lot. And then kind of touching on your other point, I mean, I kind of believe this in sales as well, where I always stay away from any sort of negation or negative. Not even because it is ambiguous, but also now you're in the mindset of scarcity and no versus in the mindset of abundance and yes. Yeah. And so like, it's a totally different mindset. And every time you have any of those kind of negations, or you push people into those mental models of no or don't, I just get really kind of nervous about priming them for saying no versus giving them a story of why they should say yes. Yeah.
No, it's such a huge and simple thing. Like, if you're saying it doesn't do something, you already know what it does do. So why, like, it's such a simple change to make, right?
Yeah, I love that. As people go more and more mobile first, are you seeing any type of transition into thinking of the website being consumed mobile first? Or are you still seeing kind of a hybrid approach, or what are you seeing there, and kind of what are your recommendations for people? So to give you an example, so I had actually the client you did the audit for, they were actually like a 70-30 split. I was really in terms of mobile to desktop, which was actually really eye-opening to me, where predominantly I was, because I'm interacting with it on the desktop, so you usually have your own biases, right? And so it was just this really big eye-opener where everything on desktop was actually a fantastic experience, but then you move to mobile, not so fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, we take info in our onboarding for mobile desktop data. Our average is about 80 mobile. And that's,
wow.
Yeah, 80 mobile. I mean, because we're dealing with direct to consumer brands, there's so many that they're built online. So they're built from Facebook ads and Instagram ads. So a lot of that traffic that their foundations are built on is mobile, and innately. But I think, for me, we always audit it mobile first, regardless, because the success of that brand, no matter what it currently is going to be in mobile. That's just how things are going. But I think one of the more interesting changes that happened this year that I don't personally think enough people are paying attention to is, within the iPhone or iOS ecosystem, Safari moving their search bar to the bottom. I don't think people understand that that's effectively going to change that. Now your website nav, like fast forward 24 months, every website nav is going to be on the bottom of your site. And how that, when you think of how a user comes to a page and scrolls, when it's at the top, okay, well, it just goes off screen and I move past it. If it's already at the bottom, what happens? Does it stay there? Am I scrolling behind it? Is it gone and disappears? So there's a lot to account for there. And to be honest, we aren't commenting on it a ton in audits because a lot of our customers I don't think they're going to make that big of a change. So we're just kind of not recommending it. But I think over the next year, 2 years, you're going to see a full transition to website navigations, like the actual navigation panel for each brand being on the bottom. And I mean, it should be. It's such a simple thing. Like, unless people start holding their phones like this, there's no reason for it to be at the top, right? And you're constantly reaching. It's frustrating. Like, it sounds so dumb that reaching an extra inch causes the conversion to go down, but it does. Like, it just does. Yep. The easier the buttons are to reach, the easier it is to access. The faster you do it, the more often you do it.
Yeah, I totally agree more. And that's something actually I've been sleeping on as well, where like that thumb travel is a real thing. And especially like I got baby hands. So it's like when I'm on a bigger phone, on my iPhone, it's like you're contorting your hand just to touch that thing. There's just a lot going on there, to your point, versus having them in a much more reachable spot at the bottom. You also do some really cool stuff in terms of menu truncation and kind of simplifying your menu. But the other broader point too is, like, if Apple's betting on it, it's pretty much not a fad. Like, this is something that they've obviously tested and it works, and people are using it and way happier with it. So I think it is going to be design language and kind of the new structure of mobile web as well, where you're going to see either like persistent menus right above the URL bar or something like that. So it's just much easier to get to that, because it's almost either top right or top left, right? Yeah. And even top left's worse, because you're going literally across the whole phone. And so I love that. Yeah, what a fun little. I hated it at first, but then you're like, to your point, you stop and think about it. You're like, yeah, it makes so much sense, because it's an artifact of the desktop. Yeah, like, who gives a shit where it's at on a desktop, right? Because you have this fucking massive monitor. Like, it doesn't matter. You're not touching it. But now it should be changed. It's almost kind of building off of what we were talking about, mobile first, where Safari's now being built for a mobile first experience, where before it was built primarily for a desktop experience, ported over to mobile.
Yeah, and that's how design has worked for so long. Is trends just come from piggybacking other trends, and Apple has been so good throughout, regardless of all their downfalls, and right, they're so good at, if you just look back at the different design cues that they've created, whether it's app icons or like everything, right? You go to the little details. 99% of them, they become your everyday, like, you just take it for granted. It becomes what exists now and how people perceive things in the design space. So, and especially in interaction. So my guess is that that's not going to be the 1% that doesn't go through, because it's just such a no-brainer. Like, it's one of the most blatant design trends, like you said, where navigations were designed on top, because on desktop it doesn't matter, and you're scrolling downward, so it made sense. And no one whenever they design for mobile, decide, like, no one ever challenged the fact that it shouldn't be there on mobile until Apple did. And now it's such a simple thing, but such a big thing.
It's a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, my man. Can you believe it? You made it to the rapid fire. I know you're Canadian, so the Canadian in me, which is very little, but I love you guys up there. I'm gonna have to get a little rough with you. This is the rapid fire, but put on your armor, maybe take a shot of syrup, and let's get going.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, overrated or underrated? The Edmonton Oilers.
Overrated.
Ooh, coming out with heat already. I like it. Mobile first optimization. Overrated, underrated?
Underrated.
Ooh, I love it. Running an agency. Overrated, underrated?
Extremely overrated.
Ooh, I love that. Canada. Overrated, underrated?
Underrated.
Ooh, why?
I think people just look at as Canada as this kind of polite place that's too cold, and it is definitely those things. But I think there's a resiliency for people that can put through this kind of climate, and I think you see that when it comes to business and creatives, and I think the people here are just very, very hardworking, and I think and I'm speaking more from a work perspective, but I think hiring here is at least in my experience of working in the US and in Europe, the talent is just much more focused, and I just find them more genuine.
I love it. Banff. I've always wanted to go. Overrated, underrated?
Overrated.
Oh no! Well, the mountain lakes. Oh no!
Don't get me wrong. It's stunning and it's very beautiful, and I'd recommend anyone that's coming to Canada or Alberta, I guess, should probably see it. But as an Albertan, it's just one of those places. It's like anyone that lives in a city and there's a popular place. You've been there, you're 10 times in your life, and you're like, I don't need to go again.
I don't need it anymore. All right, fair enough.
But it is great.
Still on the list.
Yeah,
the photos look incredible. Copywriting, overrated, underrated?
I'm seeing it become more focused on, so it might be not as underrated anymore, but I find it to be underrated. I think it's, there's so many interesting D2C brands launching right now that are focusing more on copy than they are even the user experience or their template or their website or any of that shit. For the longest time, Beard Brand had an amazing homepage where it was literally just 2 sentences and a button. And I remember seeing it and being like, God, I just want to audit this thing. And then I spoke with Chris, and he's like, man, their conversion skyrocketed after that went up. And I was like, oh, good thing audit didn't do it, because I would have ripped it apart and it would have crashed. But I think that it was just a random example that proves, like, the right copywriting in the right, spot in the customer journey can trump all the other money you've spent. If it's just positioned properly in copy, whether it's your ads, the tagline once they get there, or the heading once they get there, the way that your products are titled on the site, the way, like, I actually just did a Twitter post this morning about, like, copywriting on buttons. So many brands that we consult with, they just put shop now or start now, and it's just like, why? Like, you have to assume that they came to your site, they're there for half a second, and they may have looked at nothing on the site except that button. It should say shop hats at the very least, like whatever you sell. Shop where am I going? And I think, that's not copywriting, but it is. I mean, you have to be very intentional with every word. I think it's super underrated. Sorry, long-winded answer.
No, I love that. And my little kind of guilty pleasure is really well written, like unsubscribe links, where it's like you go up and then it pops up and like, save money, or no, I hate saving money, and stuff, just silly shit like that. I'm like, well played. Yeah. Well, maybe I will subscribe now. Like, well played. Okay, going to uni, overrated, underrated?
Underrated. I think there was a lot in university, and that, I mean, I couldn't tell you one thing I learned in any class, don't get me wrong, but I think that I learned the skill sets of, meeting deadlines, all the different, like, just day to day as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. I think a lot of the work ethic and the things that that are taught to you in university that, you know, if you're successful in university, you come out with. Um, I think they're critical, and even just working with other people, whether it's like project
Yeah.
based stuff or like, I think there's a ton of learnings there. That said, I could have got those same learnings getting an arts degree instead of a commerce degree, or it really had
Right.
nothing to do with it being a business degree that got me into business. It was more just the overall education of that mentality, not necessarily that topic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Favorite meal and why?
Oh, my favorite meal. I I really, really love pasta. Um,
Mm,
I my wife is a
what kind?
my favorite is cacio pepe, which is just like just pepper and
Sounds bougie.
no, it's not. It's just it's just pepper and cheese, but it's it's just so delicious. My wife's such a good cook, so I'm very lucky that I'm always eating good. But my part of the businesses that I've worked with locally in the Alberta area is a group of Italian restaurants from a chef here that I kind of got me into Italian food and pasta. So I've just become infatuated with Italian food, and simple pastas it would be top of that list for sure.
Oh, I love it. Did you do any culinary exploration when you were in Paris? That's supposed to be one of the better food scenes in the world, right?
Yeah, so I mean throughout the last decade I've done quite a few trips where we're just going to restaurants, you know, six, seven restaurants a day, and that's the whole purpose of the trip. But I think in Paris I had a newborn and a 4 year old. So you know, going around the subway stations with a stroller isn't always fun. But we did quite a bit of exploration. My wife's a sommelier, so we did a lot of wine and
Oh,
wine
wow.
wine tours and yeah, went to Reims and you know where champagne is made, and yeah, it was amazing. It was great.
Oh, wow. How cool. That is funny. I love that. Somalia. Wow. You picked a good one, huh?
Yeah.
Um, favorite newsletter?
Favorite newsletter. This is going to sound like a broken record based on Twitter lately, but it's definitely Sharma's.
Yeah.
I think that there's a few out there, and I'm not gonna name any because I don't like giving bad press, but I think there's a few going back to copywriting that are a little long-winded, and
Yeah.
um, you know, once you built up that brand trust, I think it's totally fine to give someone a novel in their email inbox. But I think Nick does a really good job of meeting in the middle of he really does go through it line by line and just say, did this line give value? Yes or no? Cross out. Or you go through that, and there's really not a ton of fluff. It really
Yep.
is meat and potatoes and nothing but value. You're not like wasting minutes going through all the fluff trying to find where the value is. It really is just kind of really packed full of it. And I really appreciate that in what he does. Like not all of it is necessarily relevant to me or stuff that I really care about, but his intention with the content in there, I think, is really dialed in, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone.
Yeah. Super strong. Favorite logo of all time?
Oh man, there's this weird refrigeration company in Alberta that's just like it's a
You
it
have to send it to me.
it's
It's amazing.
it's amazing. You probably can't even find it online. They probably have like four employees and they're from like 1960. But I drive by it all the time and I'm just like, oh man, whoever did that, I just want to meet him. But I think
What?
my favorite all time is probably CN Rail. I don't know if you know what CN Rail is, but it's like
Maybe
it's
ish.
it's like the Canadian National Railway, and
Okay.
it's just like
Man,
a C and an N made of like a simple stroke that looks like a railroad track. It's just so simple and brilliant.
I,
I
I
also
love it.
I also like have a secret infatuation with the Casper C. I just love that no one, not many people will notice. I don't even know if they have it anymore, but that C that was like the unrolled mattress, um, I thought was just brilliant. Do they even?
But just so you like the little Easter egg logos, like
Yeah,
the FedEx stuff, and
yeah,
yeah,
I don't like I don't like when it's like a ticketing company and the logo's a ticket. Like I hate that shit. But if it's if there's intention there where if you look for it you can find it, or if you're like I really love that stuff, because in a lot of those cases they haven't forgotten the main thing, which is just keeping it simple and memorable, right? Just like
yeah,
we're talking about with conversion. It's just like, is it simple? Does it get to the point? And I think most of the references I would give you would be very, very simple.
Yeah, I love that. I always find it, small digression here though, funny when you see these huge corporate kind of big budgets truncate down to this uber simplified logo where you're just like, they probably paid $500,000 for that. And basically the designer went in and like the Starbucks logo, for example, they just start deleting shit. Like, here you go.
Yeah.
$500K, please. You're like, all right. And it looks great. Don't get me wrong, but I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall there where it's like addition by reduction, which is not a horrible strategy. But again, when you're commanding those premiums in terms of price point, it's kind of funny. Like, so what did you do exactly for $500,000?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry if I have 10 more seconds. Going back to like a little snippet of information that we're always talking about in audits is a lot of D2C brands, they don't make their brand responsive. They only make their site responsive. So what I mean by that is when it scales down to mobile, whether it's a logo or their icons or whatever, it's okay to have second versions of it that are more like, if you had your tagline in the desktop version or on a billboard, great. That doesn't mean you need to have it in your mobile device.
Totally.
Like have a mobile
Use
version.
the moniker.
Yeah, like have a mobile version, make your logo responsive, just like a lot of these big corporations do for a lot less money. I'll do it in the audit for nothing.
Boom, look at that, people. Breaking deals. Okay, 2 more questions, or actually 3, I lied. Favorite way to spend your time?
Favorite way to spend my time? I don't read as much as I'd like to anymore, but my favorite thing recently is I'm renovating a house and I put in a wood burning fireplace. So my favorite thing to do recently is, and because it's -30 here, obviously, has been making a fire. And I've really become really great at it. And I didn't know it was one of my favorite things until the last year. But there's something about having to take the time and effort and do it properly. And like all these different things that go into something, effectively so simple. But there's some sort of weird pleasure I take from heating my house with a fire. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. I love it.
There's some primal link to that. Like when I like to do a lot of backcountry stuff and or camping and what have you. And when you're allowed, we always, spark up a fire. And there's just something like so relieving being out in the wilderness, or to your point, like in your home, and you're like, I'm self-sufficient. I'm heating my, like, it's this kind of this very independent feeling. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Last 2, favorite follow on Twitter.
Favorite follow on Twitter. I am personally new to Twitter in the last year. I've been off social media for a decade.
Nice.
Who do I got back onto Twitter because of Chris. So I'm going to say Chris. I think he's
Love
always
it.
putting out good content. And honestly, man, I'm not saying this because this is the Triple Well podcast. The Triple Well Twitter newsletter, I've kind of seen Triple Well from the very start, and I think you guys have done a tremendous job of just being present, being relevant, and talking about things that matter, not just fluff. Like I talk about fluff content and that type of bullshit. I think a lot of what you're putting out there is really timely and relevant. So I appreciate your guys' stuff too.
Oh, mad love. Okay, cool. Last question. If you got dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, who would it be and why? And this is at one table. So all 4 of you will be there. You and then the 3 other people that you choose.
Wow. Dead or alive.
And fictional, non-fictional. So if you like characters from a book or a movie or something like that.
It would probably be my grandfather.
Love it.
Jerry Seinfeld.
Is he passed now? Or?
He's passed, yeah.
Okay, yep.
Jerry Seinfeld.
Dude, I'm a huge Seinfeld fan.
And, oh God, I don't even know who would the third be. Who's going to round that out?
Get
probably be
Musk in there, some entrepreneur.
Yeah, I feel like I know what Musk would be like, and I don't want to have dinner with him.
I love it.
I don't know. It'd be some athlete. I just don't know who. Probably like a Tom Brady or one of those athletes where I just kind of want to ask a bunch of questions, get inside their head, get the perspective of that. I think Tom Brady amazes me, just everything about his sports journey.
It is really, even if you don't like him, you have to acknowledge he's the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the quantification of stats are just so incredible.
Yeah.
Wow, man, just like you Canadians do. I tried to be rough and tumble with you during rapid fire, and I come out with a smile and wanting to hang out with you more. You're incredible. All right, Shaun, we're wrapping up. Tell us how to get more involved with either Cullen or Audit, or the stage is yours. Let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I invite you to go to the site audit.co if you're looking for any conversion help, or even just like we say on the site, a fresh set of eyes. We don't just work with D2C brands. We work with a ton of different industries, from airlines to, we have a ton of people reach out to us from different verticals and industries. There's an option on the site to try it for free, which we just send you a what we call a quick win, which is just kind of very similar to some of the Twitter content you see, kind of a before and after of a section of your site. And then on the Coolum front, I believe we have opened back up the gates, and we're onboarding new customers. So if you're looking for any performance marketing help, Chris is amazing. I'd highly recommend
really top tier.
Even just reaching out and having the team go through and auditing your existing, I say audit with AUDIT, not ODDIT, having the team audit your marketing, just to kind of see our approach, I think is going to be super beneficial. Yeah.
Fantastic. And we'll put all those links in the show notes as well. That's it, folks. This is the last one of the year. Shaun, thanks so much. Episode 13 in the books. If you do want to try and get involved with Triple Whale more, you can go to trytriplewhale.com. As Shaun alluded to, we have a fabulous newsletter that goes out every Tuesday, Thursday called Whale Mail. You can subscribe right on our Twitter profile at trytriplewhale. And that's all we got, folks. Have a fantastic 2022. It's going to be a big, big year. Go get some audits, or get Chris to start printing you some money over at Cullen. And Shaun, again, thanks for the time, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.